Here we go. Hey, hi. You have found your way to Janine and Amy's Travel TV Live. We're glad you're here. And we're here for an extra early edition. It's almost like the early bird special at the restaurant. Although we're not senior citizens. However, it's a big night for Amy's, her anniversary. So we're going on early and we have a really great show for you. So when you think of a trip of a lifetime, do you think of travel insurance? Probably not. I mean, who does, right? But you should. You know why? Because travel insurance sounds like the most boring part of your trip unless you need it. You miss your flight, you get sick, you lose your luggage, a volcano blows up in Iceland, which happens if you think back, it did. So it's important. And travel is a huge expense. So why wouldn't you protect it with travel insurance? But it's confusing. So guess what? You're in luck. Because today we have Roseann Coyle from Sundrenched Travel and 522 Travel Group here with us. So Roseann is a fellow travel advisor and a friend, but she also worked in the travel industry. Yes, she works in the travel industry. She worked in the insurance industry for years. So we have the scoop for you tonight. But before I start, I have to say hello to my co-host, Amy Kaufman-Rilahan. Hello, Amy.
Hey, Janine. How you doing tonight?
Good. Happy anniversary, friend.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very exciting. 4 years married and still madly in love with one another. So it's a beautiful thing. I have to tell you, though, what my husband got me for my anniversary present. It's in my office. I wish I could show you. Got me a life-size giraffe lamp.
I thought you were going to say a life-size picture of him.
No, living with him is enough. But it's true. I'm looking right at it right now. It truly is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I came and it startled me to death when I walked in my office this morning. And it has a lamp in the middle of it. It is the coolest thing ever. And because he knew when we were in Africa last year or in 2019 that giraffes were my favorite. So I have a life-size giraffe lamp.
That's amazing. And giraffes are cool, man. They are.
They really are cool. So anyway, so I just had to share that with everybody because it really did. It was very, very fun. I was crying. It was so funny. So Rosie, I want to thank you for coming on board again for another one of our shows. I really appreciate it and sharing
I love it.
Your brilliance and brilliance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. It's
Absolutely.
fun. You girls are fun. It's like
I think we are. I don't know.
I think we're around the table, but this will work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm also wearing to celebrate my Browns being in the playoffs this weekend. I have my Cleveland Browns shirt on and it says Browns on the back. So we got to root on the underdog team again this weekend. So, but before we go into travel insurance and sharing all the knowledge, I do want to thank everybody for joining Janine and I this evening, or this afternoon, really. So thank you very much and joining us a little bit early to so that Tom and I can go out for our anniversary. Don't forget, we have our fabulous group of women wanderlusters. We have so much fun over there. Janine's going to drop the link. So if you're a young baby boomer and a Gen X woman who loves to travel and really loves to support and have a good laugh now and again with a bunch of fun-loving women, by all means, please join us over there. So, Janine, I'm going to kick it back over to you. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you.
Yeah, great. So I'm super excited to talk about this because especially this past year,
oh my God,
we all know how bad it was for people traveling in March and getting trapped and having trips canceled. But I think the question that people ask over and over again is, will travel insurance cover COVID-19 if they travel in the future? What say you, Roseann?
Well, maybe. It depends. First, it depends on the policy you purchase, number one. One company is not like the other company. They are very, very different. And I think it also might depend on how long this goes on. As we are seeing it going on longer and longer, some of the suppliers are picking up their own insurance. And so it might become that kind of thing where you might have to patchwork it, you know, a small policy here, a larger policy there. But that's still in the future. I'm just kind of thinking that we have to stay on top of that, because that's the way it might play out. Right now, if you're traveling, there are policies that will cover if you get COVID, but you have to have a certain coverage, and it's usually the most expensive, but it's the broadest. And I like to say it's like if you're going to buy a train set for your child. You know, if you can buy a $50 train set and maybe it has, you know, 6 little pieces to it, but you could buy the $100 train set and it's going to have a bridge that the track goes over, and it's going to have little village pieces, and it's going to have 10 pieces of the train. Travel insurance is just like that. There's smaller policies that just cover smaller things, and there's a reason to buy a small policy sometimes. And then there are very bigger policies. And of course, it goes up in price, just like the train set would. And I think that consumers are now finding out that trip insurance, which used to be like a roll of their eyes, like, oh, I don't need that. No, I'm fine. They're now, I think, rethinking that.
Right.
Because if you don't have trip insurance, you're very unprepared for a trip in this day and age, really. You're
Absolutely.
I can't imagine why anyone wouldn't invest in it at this point.
Especially for a big trip. You
Oh.
don't spend a lot of money on. I want to just a quick follow-up question to that. So to be clear, you're saying that there are policies that cover if you get COVID while you're traveling, but I'm thinking you cannot cancel because of the effects of COVID. Meaning that if you plan a trip and then a country shuts down because of COVID, is that true?
Well, some of them will cover that.
Will they?
Yeah. But you have to have ask your travel advisor what the policy says specifically about that. If it's a travel advisor and they're trying to present this coverage to a client and they're not sure, pick up the phone, call your rep. Always ask questions, both from the consumer level to the travel advisor, and then the travel advisor is just going to go on and find these questions for you before you leave the country, or before you book the trip and find out that that's not covered.
Right.
But the coverage that I think in this day and age that every consumer should have has something called CFAR. That's the nickname. That's the industry name. For any consumer out there watching, it stands for cancel for any reason. And the majority of those policies, they are the more expensive policies. You have to purchase them at the time that you purchase your trip, very far in advance, because they have very broad coverages. And as you get closer to your trip insurance diminishes in the coverage that they will extend to you. Just because you're almost on top of your trip and they don't want to cover something that actually happened, 2 months ago. So cancel for any reason, or CFAR, is the more expensive coverage, but that's the coverage where you're going to get the most ability to cover almost anything that happens to you. If you have CFAR, you also have trip interruption if you get sick while you're away. You also have trip delay, which means if your trip gets delayed because let's say you're traveling right now. You're supposed to come home on Sunday. As of yesterday, all the rules changed and you now need a COVID test to get back into the United States.
Yep.
Now, we won't talk about the COVID test right this minute, but at that point, let's say you can't get a COVID test in time to get back on a plane. You have a trip delay. Now your insurance may cover that depending on your cancel for any reason, and the extended trip coverage that you purchased. It always depends on the policy you purchased and the state that you purchased it. That's what makes trip insurance kind of complicated, because every state determines what that trip insurance company can sell to the public. So I could sit here, and I'm in New Jersey, and I could tell you, oh, this policy will cover this and this policy will cover that, but maybe it won't in Minnesota.
Right.
You'd actually have to look at that policy and ask the question. But there are policies and there are states that do sell policies that cover a large portion of what we're finding is happening. Now, I sent a question to all of our or all of the travel insurance companies that I use yesterday, asking them, I think I know the answer, but asking them point blank the question, would they cover the cost of that vaccine? Because those people that are traveling now,
Of the vaccine
they
or the
didn't know
test?
they were going to have this return vaccine. They'd already left the country. They're traveling on their vacation. And then 3 days ago, the United States came up with this.
Do you mean, Rosie, do you mean the test, not the vaccine, the
Oh,
test?
I'm sorry. I'm saying vaccine. Yes, the test.
Okay, the test. Okay.
The
All right.
test.
I'm like, they're not going to
I'm in
cover
New
the
Jersey,
cost.
and we're being bombarded with, vaccine information, where to
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
what to get, when to get it,
Yeah.
No, good point, Amy. Yes, I was talking about the test. Now,
Okay.
I haven't gotten any answers yet from our reps that we deal with about.
They probably don't know.
They probably don't know, because I read the policies, and with my background, I can read a policy. I kind of understand it, and what I'm reading, it's saying no, but they might determine
Right.
that it's part of a trip interruption, a trip delay, a
Right.
cost.
Well, it's also a medical cost, because especially when you get the
Right.
most expensive policy, which covers a vast array of just about everything that could possibly ever go wrong, it does have medical coverage. So this might be a medical filing. So Rosie, how does it work? So let's say we want to file a claim. How does that work?
Well, your client, you should give your client, obviously, before they leave, all their emergency numbers. And I think it depends on exactly what kind of claim you're filing. If a client is on a trip and they have an accident, a friend of mine was away and she fell off a horse and broke her leg. Okay, that's an emergency. At that point, her husband had to call the emergency claims number. Calling me would only, elongate the process.
Right.
However, if let's say it's a trip delay coverage and your policy covers you for meals, an extra hotel room, or those kinds of things, some policies will extend money out to the supplier that's offering you the room or whatever. But if you're talking about meals or whatever, it's a reimbursement process. That, they can I have them just send it to me as a travel advisor, as part of my service to them. And I'll send them the claims form, and I'll do all of the paperwork in between. And
that's really generous.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about this earlier and I feel like people think it's a scam or something. There's a reason, because I honestly, 9 times out of 10, I offer it to a client and they'll say no. And now you're right, because now that I have rebooked a few trips, that the suppliers are requiring people to sign off on travel insurance if they don't get it.
Correct.
So, I guess the question is, we know it's worth it, but what is their hesitance? Is it because it has a bad reputation? I mean, you think about it, we said this earlier, if you bought a $25,000 car, you would insure it, right?
Right.
So why do you think that people are reluctant?
Well, I think that it's based on their past experience. They may or may not be, a person that traveled more than once a year, or even maybe not that much, and they never had any problem. So why would they expect to have any problem going forward? They always seem to base their decision on what's happened in the past rather than what could happen in the future. And I always use the example, look, the majority of people that own a house have homeowners policy. A homeowners policy, the base of that policy is a fire policy. How many people actually have had their house burned down that have homeowners policies? I mean, what would it be? 1%? And usually the person I'm talking to has never had a house fire. But you'll insure your house because it's valuable to you. And you know that a house fire is certainly, it can happen in a million ways. And it's certainly something that it is not an impossibility. So trip insurance is the same way. I mean, yes, you may have had 500 trips and nothing's happened to you, but I also tell them you will only need trip insurance one time in your life and not have it. And
That's
you
right.
will never travel again without it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just can't convince them.
No.
Sometimes people have to learn, unfortunately, the hard way.
Well, I also think that people expect if there is a major catastrophe. I know I was only half joking about that volcano in Iceland. And if people think back, it closed air travel.
Right.
For I don't remember how long. But I remember speaking to someone who had bought a really expensive cruise. And they could not believe that the cruise line didn't reimburse them because there was a natural disaster. But the cruise still went on. They just couldn't get there.
Right.
So I think that people are surprised, or they were surprised in March that they signed a terms and condition, but then they were surprised because it was a global catastrophe. But so I think that might be part of it too. It's still doing business with someone, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that sometimes clients have an idea that they're spending a lot of money with a supplier, and that it's like gone to Macy's or somewhere and buying a very expensive coat that the supplier will bend over backwards to make it right for them. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of times they cannot. It isn't that they don't, it isn't that the supplier doesn't want to help. They absolutely do. They want you to stay as a client, but sometimes they can't. And usually it's clearly stated in your terms and conditions. You just,
nobody reads them.
Didn't read it.
Nobody reads them.
No.
You know, I do want to bring up one other thing too about travel insurance. And I can tell you that all my clients travel with travel insurance. There isn't a single client that I have ever, not even one, 100%, absolutely 100%, because I explain this all to them.
Right.
But the other thing too is I think people misunderstand is that it is a fraction. The cost of travel insurance is a fraction of the cost of the total purchase. So it's just like, to use a car insurance analogy again, or a homeowner's associate or a homeowner's insurance policy. If you're going to spend $500,000 on your home, it's a bupkis to get it covered, right? As a comparison.
Right.
And then
the whole thing. Right.
Right. And then to your point, Rosie, is that travel insurance and insurance of any kind is the cheapest thing you'll ever buy. My dad said that 100 times. It's the cheapest thing you'll ever buy because when you need it, it will save you a fortune. I had a fortune. And I remember there was one honeymoon couple very early on when I first started. And on day 2 of their honeymoon, she fell and broke her arm by the poolside. She did not buy travel insurance. This is why everybody buys travel insurance with me anyway now. And it cost her father $30,000 in hospital bills and to get her home. And they did not get a refund on their resort. Right.
Well, and I guess
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, people don't understand also when you're outside the country, your health policy, in very rare cases, it might cover you, but the majority, 99.999% of your health policies do not cover you once you leave our borders.
It even tells you that on your passport.
Yep. And if you are, let's say you're at the island and you fall and break your arm at the pool, that hospital or the emergency center that you go to, they want money right
Yep.
then, right there.
Cash.
You're not in the United States anymore. They
Right.
they don't feel the need to extend you credit. You're not
Right.
a citizen there. You're not part of
Right.
their country. You
Right.
have to come up with the cash,
Yep.
whether it's you or somebody at home giving you their credit card. And $30,000 for something like that, a serious accident in which you're leaving, you got to change your airplane, you got to get home, you might even need nursing. That's kind of like the average.
Yep.
And people have no
Absolutely.
clue. No
Right. And
clue.
their health insurance or their travel insurance would have cost them $400.
Right.
That would have been it.
Yeah.
And everything would have been covered. So it's just those lessons. So those are the lessons I share with a lot of my clients.
And that's what I do too. When I get we've never taken it before, I'm not going to get it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I tell the horror stories too, because
Mhm.
they just don't know. They just don't know.
Right.
And so that was my question about health insurance versus travel insurance. But I think you brought up a good point too, that you have to expect the unexpected. And it's important to think too, if you have elderly parents or something, so some insurance policies will cover that. Like if something happens to a family member while they're at home,
Yep.
like because we have our group with Gen X and baby boomer women. So a lot of us have older parents. So
Right.
you don't really think about that, or pre-existing conditions and
Oh yeah, it's a big one.
all of that, right? It's
Right,
important to
right.
keep it all in mind. But that also comes up to when you buy it, right? So if you have a pre-existing condition, you have to buy that early on too, right? You have to
Right.
As soon as you make
Right.
a buy.
You have to make sure that the policy that you're purchasing does cover pre-existing conditions, because there are policies that you can buy that don't have that in it. And there are reasons why to buy those lower end. If you're flying domestically and you have health coverage that's following you, you're flying from one state, 2 states over, the smaller policies may indeed be what you need. If you are going outside of the country, however, you need those bigger policies, and you need to make sure that, like I said, all insurance company and all travel insurance policies are not created equal. So
Right.
you want to make sure that you have the coverage that you personally need.
right, and especially if you're going on like an adventure,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
big
that's
adventure.
like
another thing.
hazardous potential, even if it's not overly hazardous. Like if you're on and you're just in a super rural area, just in case you need evacuation like that. But if you are going diving, if you are going skydiving, I don't even know Polly would go skydiving, would it? Can you think of something like that?
You were kind of breaking up, so I only caught like half of what you said. Were you
Oh,
asking
can you hear me better now?
if you're on an adventure trip and you're going to go skydiving or cliff jumping or something like that? Not
Yeah,
all
spelunking.
policies will cover that. Some of those things are absolutely excluded. And in order to get it covered, you have to your travel advisor would have to shop around a little bit and make sure that that's written into your policy.
Yeah,
Because there are policies that will cover it.
right.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
at least
But if you're going to do that, the cost is relative to what could happen if anything goes wrong. You
Right.
know.
Oh my gosh. Well, good. So give us your final few tips on finding the right travel insurance.
First, look at the cost of your total trip. Okay, this is not a small adventure. You're not buying a pair of socks here. Be aware that lots of things can happen on a trip anywhere, whether it's across the state lines from your house or over in Europe away from your house, and that those things can be quite costly. And then look at your personal situation. Do you have existing conditions? Do you have children that are going to be with another person that maybe something would happen to them and you'd have to cut your trip short and you would have to come home for them? do you have children that could fall and break their arm before you ever leave, and you can cancel your trip? Because policies will state that you can cancel your trip if something happens to family members. Look at your family situation and what you need, and then talk to your travel advisor. Make sure you share all of those things with your travel advisor so that they can make sure they're giving you the correct coverage and the coverage that will give you the broadest coverage.
Yeah, that's
my
good
tip.
advice. Yeah, no,
And always use a travel advisor.
Oh, I'm going with that as the foundation. Yeah.
Yeah.
of course.
And I want to say, not just out of not because I happen to be a travel advisor, but because right now the situation is so fluid. I think you would be crazy not to.
I agree.
Just it's craziness not to use a travel advisor.
Yeah,
There's too many moving parts. There's just too many moving parts. There are actually destinations now, international destinations, that are requiring proof of medical insurance and travel insurance once you arrive. So it's imperative. And the only way you can navigate you can Google your brains out, but the only way you're going to be able to navigate that is with somebody who actually does this for a living all the time.
Absolutely, because it literally is changing every day.
Every day.
So if you Google it, you could be looking at something that was from last month. You don't know.
Right.
This may be old news now.
Yeah. Anytime I update any of my clients on anything at this point, or any of my followers, I'm like, this is accurate as of January 13th, 2021 at 4:27 p.m.
Right. Exactly.
Subject to change at any minute.
Exactly.
So this was really helpful. I think that our anyone out there watching will get a lot out of it and understand a little bit better why this is important. But before we go, let everybody know where they can find you, Roseann.
They can find me at sundrenchedtravel.com. SUNDRENCHED, Sundrenched. Or they can find me at 522, the numbers 522, travelgroup.com.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, no, that's great. You
And
guys are always fun.
thank you. So if you have questions, drop them below. We'd be happy to answer them if you have questions about travel insurance or anything, really. And don't forget, if you're a Gen X woman or a young baby boom, head over to Women with Wanderlust Tribe. We're having a lot of fun over there, and we'd love to see you. So we know hope is on the horizon for travel, but in the meantime, keep dreaming about travel and finding joy close to home. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.
Go Browns.